Welcome back to the Take Back My Brain podcast. Today we have an amazing guest. His name is Mike Reese, and Mike is a great friend of mine, and he's been in the nutraceutical industry for, 20 years, Mike?
Yeah,
Yes,
about 20 years.
yes, and he's a protocol man. So if I've got some deep questions on protocols or I have a crazy question, I'm like, I need to ask Mike. So Mike's the man. Mike's the man on all of that, and he does nutritional coaching, and he just has a passion for in autoimmune health, gut health, all those types of things. So today we're going to talk about gut health. So I'm so excited you're here, Mike. Thanks for being on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Laurie.
Awesome. I love it. So how's your family?
Oh, my family couldn't be better. My oldest daughter is about to graduate from high school.
Wow. Wow.
I don't feel like I'm that old, but I guess this is how everybody feels when their oldest graduates from high school. They don't
Yeah,
want to
because
be.
it goes by so fast, right?
Yeah. But she's anxious and eager to, I think she's had senioritis for like 2 years. So she's ready to move on to the next phase of life for sure.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sure. That's such a fun stage of life to watch them go through.
Yeah, it has been.
Definitely. So let's get into the microbiome because I know that's a
Awesome.
passionate topic of yours. So
Yeah,
I deal with the brain all the time, and we can't separate the gut from the brain, right?
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can.
you can't.
Absolutely.
You can't. So you have to work on both of them together. So I say we're top down people. So everyone's like, we got to balance the brain first. So that's what I do with amino acids. But at the same time, we're doing that. We've got to address the gut because we've got that gut brain axis. Those
Yeah,
two communicate back and forth all the time. And we don't just have serotonin receptors in our brain, we've got serotonin receptors in our gut and so
amazing.
forth. So let's chat about like how does the microbiome influence chronic illness, disease, anxiety, depression? Like how does it encompass all that? Because it's kind of all the same foundation.
It's amazing how much, the microbiome, I mean, it's unseen. We're just full of bacteria, good and bad, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And when there's more bad than good, it's called dysbiosis. And we've always referred to that like within the gut. However, that impacts the brain, like you're saying. It
Right.
impacts all of the other systems of the body. So skin stuff like dermatitis and rosacea, I mean, same thing. But in this particular case with the brain, there's leaky brain, just like there
Right.
is leaky gut, like you're saying. And there's this constant relationship between the gut and the brain. And they've done enough clinical studies to find that there's this strong relationship between hostility, anger, chronic depression, and even other neurological issues that have become chronic, and how those individuals were deficient of certain bacteria that are
Right.
good, like certain flora in the gut. Um, a gentleman that I had worked with in the past for many years, Dr. Shane Morris, had
Yes.
recognized these pieces and he wanted to put them into place. And so he specializes in formulating products that have to do with the microbiome that are targeting like certain parts of the body. Like, for example, he has one that targets the brain. And
Mm-hmm.
he specifically had the right ratios of these bacteria strains put in one product, in one capsule, to influence the brain, to help these people that have hostility and anger and anxiety and depression. The list goes on, the pre-dementia, those neurodegenerative
Right.
chronic issues.
Yeah. So expand a little bit on why there's specific strains specifically for the brain and why there's specific ones for say, your hormones. Like how does that happen?
I know. How does it happen? Really? And I think they've just been able to research that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with when it pertains to hormones, like the endocrine system. For those with PCOS, let's say, what bacteria strains are they deficient in? And they've done gut tests of all kinds for those that do have chronic skin conditions or those that have metabolic issues.
Right.
What particular bacteria strains are they deficient in? There's been a lot poured into microbiome research. And in this particular case, I think the brain is the most exciting of them all.
Mm-hmm.
Although all of them are exciting, but I do think the brain is so paramount, like what your focus is in with amino acid therapy and everything you do and you specialize in. It's huge. How do they find that out? I mean, that's with different functional gut tests where they found
Right.
what these particular clients or these people are low in, are
Right.
void of.
And the microbiome is always changing, right? So we can make a huge shift in the microbiome fairly quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really a reassuring piece here. Although it's been a chronic issue, although there is chronic illness, there is autoimmune conditions that people don't seem to get a hold on and get to the next level, and they struggle with that. And it's, they take this vitamin complex, or they are advised to take this detox or that detox or gut cleanse or whatever, and they're still struggling even thereafter. There is that rest assurance that with the microbiome, when you have the right gut microbiome, and I like to say gut diversity or
There you
microbiome
go. Yeah.
diversity, when that is in place and that's thriving, it affects everything. It
Right.
affects everything you do. Are detoxes important? Absolutely. Is the gut cleanse important? Absolutely. So it's really when you're able to make that shift from this dysbiosis or bacterial overgrowth and shift it to like a diverse microbiome or diverse microbiota in the gut, that makes a big difference for the brain. It
Right.
quickly, yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't take long for that to really make a difference.
Definitely. So how does the microbiome really affect, say, an autoimmune condition? So what's going on with this dysbiosis that leads to those conditions?
That's a really good question, and I think over time, when you trace back, okay, what are the origins of the autoimmune condition?
Hmm.
How did that perpetuate? From the time somebody was in their childhood years, or certain environmental toxins or other stressors and their eating patterns. There are genetic predispositions that they have.
Right.
There are those lifestyle environmental factors that perpetuate a autoimmune condition, hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, or Graves' disease, or there's other situations. And how does that? So you're back to your question. Maybe I ought to ask you to rephrase it again. So how does autoimmune influence the
So,
microbiome?
well, really, how does the microbiome influence autoimmune expression?
Yeah, well, when you restore the right bugs, when you restore the right microbiota, that in of itself enhances the immune system.
Hmm.
It enhances all of the body's functions, starting with the gut, and that in turn is going to help. So for somebody who does have, let's say, Hashimoto's
Hmm.
thyroiditis, right? They've suffered that autoimmune condition. Of course, they need the nutritional support. They need
Right.
selenium, and they need B6, and they need zinc, and um, these different nutrients that make a big difference. However, what really is a game changer is there are particular, like bacteria, get back to
Hmm.
these specific strains they've done studies on, that can help the thyroid to appropriately secrete its hormones, to
Okay.
balance T3 and T4, to the thyroid's involvement and how it does that. The adrenal, likewise, how the adrenal secretes the right amount of cortisol. Um, in other words, the microbiome or specific bacteria can influence that regulation so that cortisol doesn't get too high or too low. It's involved in the pancreas being able to secrete insulin and glucagon and leptin and et cetera. So it's amazing how much it really does influence these critical functions. And that is one of the ways where it brings these organs and these tissues back to balance.
Mhm.
It can help the body overcome the autoimmune havoc
Right. So
that
what
it's
you're, are you
undergoing.
saying that it's sort of a communication pathway for everything to work together? Like, so it's helping the neurology work correctly in the brain to signal things that need to be signaled. It helps the pituitary to signal the ovaries and the adrenal glands. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it is. It
Okay.
is what I'm saying. Absolutely. From the hypothalamus to the thymus, the pituitary, eh, all of the above.
Okay.
Yes.
That's amazing to me. So all those little bugs in our gut can tell our brain what to do.
Yes. And
Yes.
it's constantly going on. It's not
Hmm.
like it's not like there's, a day off or a vacation from it. I mean, that vagus nerve that
Right.
connects the brain to the gut, the vagal nerve,
Hmm.
brain gut connection, it is constantly going.
Right.
It does not stop. And so with there being a surplus of those bacteria strains, then yes, the brain, it is a communication pathway.
Right.
And
And I think it's interesting, and you can confirm this. Like, we don't just have the microbiome in our gut. That's not where everything resides. We actually have microbiome on that vagal nerve, right?
that's exactly right.
Right.
Yes, that's exactly right. The microbiome, now we know that when the microbiome is out of whack in our gut, so there is dysbiosis, there is
Hmm.
small intestine bacterial overgrowth or small intestine fungal overgrowth, whatever the situation may be, then that will directly impact other systems of the body. So we know there's so much of it that is residing in the gut. However, you're absolutely right. Um, our bodies are full of bacteria. It's absolutely amazing.
Right.
And the way
There's
they've,
supposed to be like 5 to 10 pounds of bacteria in our body.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, imagine that. Imagine 5 to 10 pounds of bacteria.
And that's weight you don't
Yeah.
want to lose. You want to keep that as long as it's healthy bacteria.
As long as it's healthy bacteria. I mean, there's bacteria on the skin that have detergent qualities. Like
Right.
there's bacteria that they keep the bad guys away. So
Mhm.
the idea is that your immune system is thriving because you have the right bacteria and it's preventing those pathogens from coming back.
We
So
have
you
our
can
own
feel like
antibiotic system, right?
exactly. Absolutely.
Right. So
Yep.
we don't necessarily, if everything was working correctly, we wouldn't need to take, say, an antibiotic or even a natural antibiotic. Because if our own body was producing what it needs to produce as far as the bacteria are concerned.
Exactly. Absolutely. I think the one concern that people do have, practitioners um, have, is not introducing probiotics too early in the game. If there is a lot of this intestinal overgrowth, it's
Sure.
almost like comparing the gut or the intestines to a garden where there's lots and lots of weeds that need to be plucked, they need to be pulled, you need to till the garden, the dirt and everything, and then you can plant the rose bushes and
Right.
all of that. You can fertilize it, right?
Right.
But if you start to um, install all the good guys beforehand, that can cause some bloat and some gas and some other symptoms for those people that do have those kinds of conditions.
Right. Right.
Not with everyone, but and so the idea is to kind of clean the slate, to de-weed the garden, and there's herbs and there's oils to do
Mhm.
that with, but that shouldn't take too long. And there should never be a fear to then start taking the right probiotics, the right combinations that then, so we can get that benefit to the brain,
Right. Right.
everywhere else.
So then, as you're talking about that, kind of tilling up the soil and pulling the weeds, what's the best strategy to create that diversity in the microbiome?
The best strategy is to do that kind of a purge
Okay.
month on average. Some people do it
Okay.
even in a 15-day period. If you get those levels up,
Mm-hmm.
when you're looking at like parasites, or there's been a viral load, if you've done the blood work and have confirmed that, okay, yeah, there's been infection here, bacterial, fungal, viral, etc., we need to work
Sure.
on this. I like to look at it as like a month long, although some people may beg to differ and may choose to go longer. But I think if you're using the right therapies, then you can get rid of the bad guys within a month. And then really the goal, the long-term goal is to rotate probiotics. You don't want to get stuck on the same probiotic day in and day out.
Why not?
Like you would like with B vitamins or minerals or things. Like you're going to continue to take vitamin B6 and magnesium and zinc and those things on an ongoing basis, right?
But why don't you want to take the same probiotic?
Well, because of what's called monoculturing.
Okay.
And that was one of the problems. That's where probiotics, one of the reasons why probiotics kind of got a bad rap.
Yeah, people say, well, I've taken probiotics, they don't work for me.
Yeah. The question is, what were you taking? Why wasn't it working? What's the, there's other things to dive into and find out what exactly was going on.
Right.
Lactobacillus acidophilus, right? I mean, that's like one of the most common ones, or lactobacillus KCI. There's a few of these others that were so commercialized and people were taking those in and day out. They recolonize in the gut, but your body needs to continue to have surprises, have what's called hormesis, where you have new stressors to the body.
Right.
Your body wants continual surprises. Let's get on a little bit of a cycle, but then, okay, we need to change it up. Just like if somebody is starting to get that habit or that ritual of going to the gym, then eventually after doing these, CrossFit routines, they need to change it up rather than doing that for 365 days of the year.
Yeah.
There has to be a change. And the same thing is with our bugs. And there's such a universe, there's such a massive world of so many different bacteria strains that you want to have some of these ones first, and then you want to have some of these ones over here, and then these ones. So even just to get to capitalize on that, it's going to take time to go through multiple products.
Right. So that's why it takes so long to heal the gut. I mean, you can get a nice shift going on, within 90 days, and then you have to keep it going, right? So I always teach my clients, you have to take a different probiotic every single time. Like you're going to rotate it. You're not going to take the same one for 6 months, because then it's not going to be beneficial, right? You're just throwing your dollars down the drain, to be quite honest. You have to create that hormetic effect so that your body's like, oh, it's something new. Now what do I do with it? And then it creates, different pathways. It creates new communication that wasn't there before. So, and explain to us, because you've been in this nutraceutical industry for, at least a couple decades, all probiotics are definitely not created equal. We talked about rotating them, and say some of the big box store probiotics are definitely not going to have the same effect as the pharmaceutical grade probiotics that you and I use. So kind of explain that difference and why it's different.
There is a big difference. And it's not to say that, everything a Costco or Walmart or whatever has in their supplement section is bad for you.
Correct.
There are some exceptions there, maybe, to the Kirkland brand or whatever. Maybe I shouldn't have mentioned any names there, but, there is something to be said about third-party research,
right,
and testing for potency, that what you see is in the bottle is actually indeed in the bottle. There are manufacturers that not only have like the current good manufacturing practices, they're known as GMPs. I mean, that's pretty standard now. If you don't have those, you're in trouble. Eventually the time's going to come, you're going to be shut down unless you get your act together and you have current good manufacturing practices and good lab practices too.
Right.
So there's testing that goes in there that should go on, third-party testing on everything that's put into a capsule or a powder blend or liquid product. And it's
tell us what third-party testing is, because maybe all the listeners don't know what third-party testing is.
I'm glad you asked. So third-party testing would be where it's unbiased. In other words, if you like a specific brand and you want to know that their products have been tested for purity, if they've been tested for quality, all of that, it should be tested by another company that's not owned by that company. In other words, that the lab that does the testing, if they're owned by that company, then that would be biased, right?
Right.
I mean, it would still be, the testing could still be stellar, but it really helps when you know that it's another third party laboratory that does the testing, because then you have that assurance that, okay, there was no bias there and they did all the testing. And if a product or if an ingredient was higher in E. coli or like higher in heavy metals, arsenic, cadmium, or whatever it is, they have to discard it. And the company has to start over and go buy from another supplier.
Right. So it keeps them honest. It keeps the integrity of the company and the quality of the product where it needs to be.
Yes, it really does. It really does. Absolutely. And I think when it comes to these bugs or these probiotics, it's even more paramount. You want these to be alive and well. We're concerned about probiotics dying, right? Unless they go into the refrigerator. Not all of them need to be refrigerated, and most of them, it takes time for them to degrade, even if they're in room temperature. But still, they're very sensitive organisms, and you want them to stay alive and well. And so with laboratory testing, it's especially important that they're confirming that these live organisms are free from heavy metals and from E. coli and other pathogens, viral, bacterial, fungal. They don't have any mold in them.
Right. Because that's what we try to clean out of people. So we don't want to put all that back in there.
Exactly. Right. And the supplements industry had some liberties there. And the fact that there wasn't pharmaceutical research on subjects, there were certain liberties that a lot of newly launched supplement companies had. But eventually, when you look at the world today with supplements, it is actually far more regulated. If you're looking at a professional line that is carried through practitioners, it's likely that the FDA has come by and done a full-scale audit, not only on their marketing materials, but also on like the quality control and quality assurance and everything that they have going on. And so not everybody loves the FDA for what they stand for or whatever, but at least if a company is FDA compliant, then you know that they've had to meet these strict standards. And there's that's where a professional line that provides for practitioners is typically one you can absolutely trust, because they have these standards. They have to have the third-party lab that tests for each of the ingredients.
Does it say that on the bottle that there's third-party testing?
It doesn't. Not all of them say that. There should be, if they paid for a certain like gluten-free certification, if they've met the criteria, then it can say, gluten-free. Yes, exactly. GMO. The big concerns: GMO, soy, gluten. Let's see here.
Corn.
Nut allergies too. People are concerned about that, and so manufacturers can assure that there's no traces of nuts whatsoever in the packaging or bottling or like encapsulation rooms. So, but yeah, unfortunately, I mean, not all bottles say that. But there are enough evidence, like from the manufacturer, you could get like certain documents from the manufacturer to confirm that they meet those standards. When I worked for a manufacturer before, I would send them what's known as a certificate of analysis. And that just confirms that a particular ingredient is good, or the whole product is good and it meets all that criteria.
So what do you say about companies when you call them and they, I run into this as a practitioner too, like, can I have your certificate of analysis for, XYZ product? And they're like, yeah, we don't give that out. What do you say to that?
Well, I say okay, is there somebody that I can talk to? I mean, that's unheard of. You should, if you do have certificates of analysis, then you should be willing to share them with me. I guess the question would become, do you have certificates of analysis?
Right,
Oh,
right. Or what's on them that you don't want to share. So that's
oh, sure.
what I always kind of lead to, like, maybe your product isn't as clean as you're claiming it is then maybe. So, you know,
Probably.
and then as a practitioner, I won't recommend that product. So yeah, even like, a lot of practitioners don't like the Now brand, NOW. And I actually use it a lot because I'll call them. They'll give me a certificate of analysis, right? There's some other practitioner lines that I have called and like, yeah, no, we don't give that out. And I'm not going to use your line then, right? So
Right. Yeah. It's good to have that rest assurance for sure. And Now Foods is a great brand.
yeah,
Um,
millions of
and
dollars in research and third-party testing and
yeah,
yeah. So anyway, but we
I
got that's a
realize,
little bit off the
yeah,
topic of probiotics, but it applies for everything. We want to make sure that we are having the highest quality of supplementation in our body. If you're going to take supplements, you pay for what you get. So
you really do. I think where Dr. Morris in particular, who I had the pleasure of working with and working for in the past, one of the things that he did 12, 13 years ago when they were putting probiotics together to see how well it would work for the brain or for the skin, et cetera,
mhm.
they found that to keep the probiotics live and well and to grow and to multiply and recolonize and do all of that, they needed the same nutrition that we need.
Isn't that
Makes
doesn't that
sense.
make sense?
Yeah, like they thrived on antioxidants.
Right.
They thrived on like enzymes and vitamins and minerals. They needed a lot of those similar, the micronutrition that we need to thrive.
Right.
And it was a game changer in his research because they went through a lot of trial and error. And his brand is called Mybiome, Mybyome.
Yeah, and
And
that'll be in the show notes for everybody.
yeah, Mybiome, you can order them, or they are sold through practitioners, but sold under the Systemic Formulas umbrella.
Right.
There's also Microbiome Labs, and there
hmm
are other products or other brands out there that are reputable as well.
Right. Right.
But his in particular, some of his, like an immune boosting one, and then back to the brain, the
hmm
neurobiome.
Yeah.
You're just, regardless of really good brands that are out there, you're just not going to probiotic that's that like diverse in
hmm
bugs, in bacteria that replenish the brain.
Yeah.
It's pretty cutting edge.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal product, really phenomenal. And I love the prebiome, the food that comes with it. It doesn't taste like the most amazing, but you can work around that. But it feeds those healthy bacteria that your brain is so in need of, or the immunobiome, and I like the pterobiome. So those are the three that are out right now, I think. And there's more to come, I hear.
Yes, yeah, there is more to come, and really, and what they're finding, like for the female endocrine, for example, when you replenish the right bugs, the right probiotics,
hmm
nutrition for the endocrine system works better.
Right.
So, and likewise with the brain, when you look at the amino acids that cross the blood-brain barrier, or whatever it is nutritionally that's helping boost the function of the brain, the idea is that when you replenish the bacteria, the right bacteria, everything else works better.
Right.
So the GABA, the tryptophan, everything else, and the SAMe, whatever it is that's impacting the brain, essentially should be metabolized, assimilated even better.
Exactly, because the microbiome, it actually makes neurotransmitters. And so the microbiome makes their own neurotransmitters, which then helps us make our neurotransmitters. And so we have to be in this symbiosis, this equality, this
Yeah,
beautiful relationship, this dance, I like to call it, with our microbiome in order for the brain to work correctly.
it's amazing how it
It is
is
amazing.
amazing how it works.
Yeah, our bodies are so intricately designed, and it's so fun to watch the shifts just from, taking a probiotic and changing your diet. So you're talking about, the microbiome needing the same food that we do. So talk about diet and how that's related to microbiome.
It's interesting in today's world of carnivore diet aholics. I
Yeah.
mean, there are, that has been that has taken this industry by storm recently. Like people
Yes.
are all over the carnivore diet, and rightfully so. There are those benefits. I like to say short-term benefits, although some people like to do it long-term.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it. There are some issues that I would propose, but the carnivore, I think, frees those that have gastrointestinal inflammation like
Yes.
Crohn's or like ulcerative colitis, SIBO, or whatever. They stop eating those foods that are giving them the
The
digestive havoc.
offensive foods. Yeah.
The offensive foods, exactly, whether they're oxalates or
Mhm.
they're tannins or whatever, you
Whatever
know.
their issue is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I like to look at something like that, just eating the meat and fat diet as
Hmm.
being a way, like a window of time that's going to help you get rid of the parasites, get rid of the pathogens, um, because you're kind of starving them,
Right. Hmm.
giving them the fuel that they're accustomed to getting to keep thriving. So that's smart. But now you've got this zero-scape garden, right?
Hmm.
If you really want something to thrive and you want a lot of shrubbery and rose bushes and annuals and perennials and just this diversity, this beautiful garden, rather than just bark chips, you need to eat plant-based foods too.
Right.
I,
Right.
the issue is that those people who are dealing with a lot of inflammation and have a lot of havoc, when they start eating a bunch of kale and spinach and asparagus
Mhm.
and broccoli and all those things, you'd think, wow, those are amazing foods, rich in nutrients.
Yep.
Well, they cause more problems initially. They can
Yeah.
for some people, but they can for the time being. But over time, when their gut is ready, the a lot of those plant-based foods that have the phytonutrients can feed the gut. They
Hmm.
act as what's called prebiotics. So
Right.
they're the fertilizer. They feed the gut microbiome. They help it thrive. They help it grow. They have their place. And even if you start small, if somebody really struggles with fiber, even if they just start really small micro doses and gradually increase
Yep.
that over time, that can be a game changer for the microbiome for the whole body, not just the gut.
Right.
So that's my argument. Although I support the carnivore diet for a short period of time,
Hmm.
other variations of it,
Yeah.
I do think that there is then a time and place throughout life to eat the variety of foods that will enhance the microbiome.
Yeah, exactly. So we talk about diet variation, right? I think you and I are on the same page of that.
Yeah.
Love carnivore. It's good for certain conditions. I like to do, a few weeks of carnivore several different times a year, but then I'm going back to eating, my asparagus, my broccoli, and my whatever I decide, I want to eat, right? So flex in and out of all of those things because that creates diversity. So just
Yes,
like you're not supposed to do the same exercise all the time, you don't want to eat the same food all the time because
right.
then you don't have that diversity in your gut. And so then your microbiome, excuse me, is not healthy and not vibrant. And that's what we want: vibrant, healthy microbiome. Because when we have a vibrant, healthy microbiome, then we can heal, and then we have a vibrant, healthy you.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's the goal, right? That is the goal. So I think there's a time and place where you change things up. And if you've been eating lots and lots of greens and you need a little bit of a break, you take a break. But
Mm-hmm.
overall, I think that there are other plant-based foods that are some of the best things you can do or put into your body for your microbiome, um, over time. So that should be a long-term goal.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Do you eat seasonally? Do you recommend, just kind of shifting in and out of seasonal vegetables, or what are your top 5 things to tell people to do to have a healthy microbiome? What are they?
I think if they're able to do that, if you're able to eat seasonally,
Yeah.
given, if you can shop that way, game on, go for it. I think ideally that would be excellent for your microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we haven't mentioned exercise.
Yeah. How does that affect your microbiome?
If exercise is a brand new thing for you, if it's something you've never done, so you're a beginner, and and it's hard even just to do a squat with no weight, or you're just learning some of these basic movements, hey, at least you're doing it. And by moving, whether it's cardiovascular or aerobic, you're just doing a little bit of a walk, or you're jogging, maybe you decide to climb up stairs, you go to a track and you walk up bleachers, whatever. Or if you're going to a gym and you're doing like resistance training, either of those ways, they all boost, they're all beneficial to the microbiome. So even if you're starting as a beginner and you're not running a marathon, or you're not doing a CrossFit workout,
Mm-hmm.
necessarily this in shape athlete yet, you're still benefiting your microbiome just with that movement, just by sweating,
So
exerting yourself.
how does that shift your microbiome? Explain that to me.
It's interesting. They've studied like marathon runners, for example, or those who are consistent at like cyclists, for example.
Yeah.
And they have certain microbiota that is just off the charts high.
Okay.
Whereas then you find somebody over here who's been in more of the like heavier lifting, but like really,
Mm-hmm.
hard workouts.
Yeah,
They've been
yeah.
eating well, but they're just doing more of the intense anaerobic routine. They have other kinds of helpful
So
microbiota that have been built up.
Uh-huh.
And so it's really curious that there's such a variety. The idea then is to, if you are able to do so in your pursuit of exercise, get some anaerobic activity, get some cardiovascular activity, try to vary it, go on hikes.
Right.
Don't just do only bodybuilding. Don't only jog. Try to vary things. That's probably one of the best things you can do for your microbiome.
Right. So everything is varied. Diet variation, exercise variation, your thought patterns influence your microbiome. So your thoughts, you want to have positive, happy thoughts, because if you are always depressed and angry and negative thinking, your microbiome is not going to be healthy, right?
It's
all
so
of this has
true.
an influence.
I'm glad you brought up that piece. I think the emotional, mental, spiritual, quantum physics, or whatever you call it, the law of attraction, that the chronic mindset absolutely is going to affect the microbiome. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, we're one and the same. They're part of us, we're part of them. So we have to keep the little bugs happy by keeping our brain happy. And then when they're happier, then we don't have to work so hard at it,
I think a question that has come to me is, okay, if I am, I've got my act together with positive mental thinking, and I've really worked on that. I've been eating really well. I'm exercising well. Why should I have to supplement?
Yeah,
Like,
why is that?
Why should I have to take these additional capsules? Well, despite the good eating and these great practices, which they're awesome, they're phenomenal. And I mean, congratulations for getting that far. That takes a lot of commitment and time, and it takes a lot of effort. But despite all of that, we're at a point where there is definitely a deficit of or a deficiency of like these right microbes, whether it's from our soil or it's just from our food supply. There has been, I guess this, Dr. Morris actually phrased this better, and I've heard other people talk about this as well, how unlike ever before, we do need to supplement those specific bacteria strains, which weren't, they weren't as deficient 100 years ago, 50 years ago,
Right.
pre-World War II.
Well, we have a lot more toxins in our environment that actually kill specific kinds of bacteria, right? or they
Yes.
block the absorption, or they need nutrition and minerals and vitamins that we can't always get because of toxicity.
I think we can prepare the terrain in our
Mm-hmm.
gut. We can do everything on our part to feed those, but we have to reintroduce some
Right.
that have been lost.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do, is if we're low or we're completely deficient in those ones that are the best for our skin, the best for our brain, we can actually reintroduce those with these supplements. And these supplements have been put together with a very high potency to make a difference quickly.
Right.
They're therapeutic. And then the exercise, the food, and the sleep. I didn't mention sleep, positive thinking.
So
Those
many.
things will all come into play and just enhance that.
Right. Right.
So
I love this. We could talk for hours on the microbiome. So many pieces, so many pieces. But if you wanted to leave the audience with, one last thought on the microbiome, what would it be, Mike?
oh my goodness. Um, I think what we've talked about is variety.
Mm-hmm.
Change things up, and take probiotics, and then change it the next month, and then change it again. Keep introducing to the body new things.
Right, right. Keep that homeostasis going. Keep that stress, those positive stressors going.
Yep.
Yep. I love it.
That's what I would leave.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mike. This has been
You're
a
welcome.
fantastic conversation. I'm going to have you on again. We'll talk about some more good stuff, I hope, in the future, if you would like to be back
I would
on.
love to.
So,
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. I enjoyed our conversation as well.
awesome. So thank you, everybody, for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.
Excellent.